over the years, consistently, Jews for Jesus have advertised, had a poster with a depiction of an Orthodox Jew, a depiction of Orthodox Jews representing rabbis, and they've had the words, think for yourself. Think for yourself. Now, the inference of this, think for yourself, which is directed at the Jew, because they have obviously this picture of Orthodox Jews, is to suggest to the viewer, right, who's viewing this poster, that Jewish people don't actually think for themselves, and that they are totally in submission to rabbis, and they are sort of controlled and managed by them, and there's something wrong with it. In other words, Jewish people aren't thinking for themselves, and isn't it about time, says Jews for Jesus, that you do think for yourself? So the inference is Jews aren't thinking. Jews don't think about their religion, about their beliefs, and that it's the rabbis that are controlling the Jewish community, and there's somehow the suggestion that all this is a bit insidious and wrong, and that really what should be happening is that all Jewish individuals should be examining the Hebrew scriptures and deciding for themselves whether Jesus is the Messiah. Now, at first glance, it doesn't sound unreasonable for Jesus to say to a Jewish person, look, the rabbis don't know everything. Why don't you look at what we have to say and look at the scriptures, what we're saying, and consider that Jesus might be the Messiah. So you're thinking, oh, that's not unreasonable. He might be the Messiah. The rabbis don't know everything. Maybe Jews for Jesus are right. Maybe I should start going to all their lectures and listening to their point of view of the Hebrew scriptures and why they think it pertains to Jesus being the Messiah, and so on. It does actually sound quite reasonable until you actually think it through. Do you know, and have you ever considered, that the rabbis really are specialists in biblical studies of the Hebrew Bible? Just as if you have a heart complaint, you see a cardiologist. If you need a legal advice, you see a solicitor, a lawyer, a barrister, right? If you have dental problems and it's very severe, you will see a dental specialist. In other words, we know, common sense, that there are people out there in all spheres of life, law, medicine, every sphere of life, and including religion, of people who are experts at what they're trained to do. In other words, you wouldn't presume to know more than a cardiologist about your heart. You might be interested about your heart and gone online and Wikipedia because you're interested to know about your heart disease and things, but you don't actually know more than your cardiologist. You don't know more about divorce law than your divorce lawyer. You don't know more about law than a judge. You know a little bit, but you don't know as much as they do because they are specialists. And what you need to remember is that rabbis are specialists in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible. They have studied the Bible. They have studied Torah, right? That's part of their training. And they become specialists in the Hebrew biblical studies. They know the Bible, right? Now you say, well, I've read a bit of the Bible. I know about Abraham and Isaac, and I know about Joseph. We have a Seder table. I know, I know about the plagues. But you see, You cannot compare your knowledge to the knowledge of the rabbis, right? They are specialists in their subjects, which is biblical studies, which involves the study of Hebrew, right? They are experts in the same way a cardiologist is an expert on the heart, so rabbis are experts on the Hebrew scriptures, right? Now, what Jews for Jesus are suggesting in this phrase, think for yourself, is they're insinuating somehow, there's an insinuation that the rabbis are trying to control the Jewish people, and there's an insidious purpose behind it, you know, that their role is to perhaps to hide truths from the Hebrew Bible, that rabbis are perhaps in a conspiracy to hide the true meaning of the Hebrew scriptures to you. In other words, and I think this is really quite anti-Semitic, because this could only come really from the non-Jewish world, really. The Jews for Jesus are being influenced by the religion that they believe in, which is Christianity, because evangelical Christians do, many of them, particularly those that love Israel and they're all fired up for the Jews, do have this belief, many do, that the rabbis know that Jesus is the Messiah from the Hebrew scriptures. They know it, but they're deliberately conspiring to hide it from the Jewish people and make sure that they don't realise that Jesus really is the Messiah. So that is the inference of this advert, these lines, think for yourself. In other words, don't believe what the rabbis are telling you, because they're lying to you and deceiving you and hiding things from you. But what you should do is come along to one of our meetings or read one of our leaflets and believe everything we say, because we are the ones who are telling you the truth, where the rabbis are not. They're hiding very important information from you that you should know. And you should know that Jesus is your Messiah. You should know that he has died on the cross for your sins. You should know that you've got to believe in him in order to have your sins forgiven and have a place in heaven. They're hiding from you that you must believe in this Jesus, because if you don't, you will go to hell. So they are actually in support of a section, and there is a section of fired up evangelicals, and there always have been. There is a Christian view that the rabbis know that Jesus is the Messiah, and they're hiding him from the Jewish people. The old Jewish conspiracy, right? Which is basically anti-Semitic. Anything with a Jewish conspiracy, you know it's anti-Semitic. You know, the thing is, the Jews are running the world, the Jewish conspiracy. The Jews are really in charge of everything, the Jewish conspiracy. And this is permeated into this Jews for Jesus statement. A picture of Orthodox Jews who are by inference studying and knowledgeable about the Hebrew scriptures, and the words, think for yourself. In other words, don't listen to what these rabbis are saying, these learned men, and now we've got learned women. Don't listen to them. Don't pay attention to them. They can't be trusted. The Jew can't be trusted. Well, where have we heard that before? Where have we heard that before? Now they're saying, what you've got to do is think for yourself. Look at the Hebrew scriptures and you decide exactly what the Hebrew scriptures mean, not the rabbis, right? It's almost like saying a person with heart problems, you do your research online, right? Which is very fashionable, and find out what's the matter with you and diagnose and treat yourself. This is very, very dangerous, right? Because as people know, if you've ever tried to research symptoms that you have in order to try and get the bottom of what's the matter with you, instead of going to the doctor, it can open a whole can of worms, right? It could mean anything and everything. And this is not the way to find out what's the matter with you if you're ill. What you should be doing if you're ill is going to see a doctor, right? Because doctors are trained. They're trained and they know what questions to be asking you and what additional questions to be asking you from the information you're giving you. They're also able to examine you and determine things from the examination. And they can also say, actually, this could be serious and I want to send you to a specialist, somebody who has more knowledge about the heart than I do. They are very, very specialised, or somebody who is a surgeon, somebody who specialise in gynecological issues. So they will refer you to somebody with even more knowledge, right? Right? It's not for you to diagnose yourself. It is very, people do keep going online trying to work out what's the matter with them. But really, common sense would dictate is go and see a doctor. They are the people, the best people to go to determine what's the matter. Now, no one is saying a doctor never makes a mistake. Doctors occasionally do make mistakes and they would be the first to admit it. But that does not mean because a doctor occasionally makes a mistake with a diagnosis, that means all doctors are idiots and you shouldn't go to a doctor if you're feeling ill. In the same way, it doesn't mean because occasionally a rabbi might come out with a statement in the Jewish Chronicle or the Jewish weekly paper with a statement that perhaps is a bit silly or doesn't make sense or is illogical. There's no reason for you to think that all rabbis are idiots. They're not. You do get in all spheres of excellence, whether it's law, medicine, teaching, religion, professors, you do get some odd ideas, right? And odd comments. However, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater and you don't assume all rabbis are idiots or all professors are idiots or all lawyers are idiots or all judges are idiots. In other words, you use a bit of your common sense. Occasionally, judges do make silly statements and ridiculous judgments. No one's disputing that. But it doesn't mean that they are idiotic in all their judgments. It doesn't mean they're idiotic over everything. It just means they've made a slight mistake. Now you have to understand and accept the fact that there have been millions and millions of learned men, rabbis, those who have studied the Hebrew scriptures. They studied it from when they're very young and they've studied it all their lives, and this is over centuries. How many thousands and hundreds of thousands of rabbis have there been that have ever existed since Torah? We just don't know how many rabbis have existed, right? They're all clever, smart, savvy people, thinking round the box, because we do love to discuss, we do love to debate, we do love to exchange ideas, right? Lots of discussion within Judaism. People are not studying scriptures in isolation. We do talk and exchange ideas. That is the whole mythology. Is that the right word? Within the learning process within Orthodox Judaism is you do discuss and debate and stimulate and think round the box and everything. So don't patronise and underestimate your own people, because it can sometimes happen within the Jewish people, the Jewish community, that there are Jews, and I've heard many Jewish people say, over my life, say, oh, rabbis, they don't know what they're talking about, and they think they know everything. And there's also can you hear within my tone of voice a contempt? They have that contempt like, oh, the rabbis, what do they know? Well, I'll tell you something, they know a hell of a lot, and they know a hell of a lot more than you do. And they know a hell of a lot more than the Jews for Jesus. I'm telling you, this is factually correct what I'm telling you. They know a hell of a lot more about Torah and all of the Hebrew scriptures, far more than Jews for Jesus. I was a Jewish believer in Jesus for 42 years. And I can tell you, I'm speaking the truth here. I am speaking the truth. What has happened is that there are Jewish people who have been converted to the Christian faith. Now, in the 1970s, there was a decision in Europe at the evangelical conference to make a concerted effort to try and reach the Jews again, to convert them to believe in Jesus. And they were saying, how are we going to do this? We've got to try and come up with a new way, right? An original way. And they came up with this idea of emphasizing the Jewishness of Jesus. So rather than converting Jews to Christianity and then knocking everything Jewish out of them to get them Christianized and gentilized, so to speak, to knock everything out of the Jew that's Jewish in every way, shape or form, they thought, no, what we'll do is we'll re-emphasize the Jewishness of Jesus and say, Jesus was Jewish, Jesus wore yarmulke, he wore tzitzis, he went to shul, synagogue every week, is to persuade the Jewish people that believing in Jesus is actually all right because he's the Jewish Messiah. And there's a kind of deal like, yeah, Jesus wore tzitzis. Well, if you want to wear tzitzis, you can do. You still believe in Jesus. Wear a yarmulke, you still believe in Jesus. If you want to pray in Hebrew, well, pray in Hebrew, but you're still believing in Jesus, right? So it's kind of a compromise, because the Christian world, the non-Jewish Christian world, is saying it's better that we get these Jews converted and believing in Jesus, even if they are still praying in Hebrew and they still want to wear the yarmulke and they want to sing Jewish songs and they want to call Jesus by his Hebrew name, which is Yeshua. So they're kind of making a deal. Well, why not? The most important thing from their point of view is get the Jew to worship Jesus, because this is what the faith in Jesus requires. Anyone who believes in Jesus worships Jesus, because that goes hand in hand with Christianity. Now, in the 1970s, Mark Rosen, who was known by his Jewish name Moshe Rosen, became a convert to Christianity. He trained within the Baptist denomination and became a Baptist ordained minister. So you have to realize that Moshe Rosen, the founder of Jews for Jesus, was working with the evangelical Christians because he was a convert to Christianity. He was a Jewish person who believed in Jesus. And he's on board with this. He wants to convert his own people to believe in Jesus. And he is in agreement. Well, yes, let's re-emphasize the Jewishness of Jesus. So hence is born in the 1970s, the early 70s, the Jews for Jesus movement. And the purpose of the movement is to say you can still be Jewish and believe in Jesus. You could still go to shul on Saturday if you wanted to, but you're still believing that Jesus is the Messiah. They're opened up on a Saturday. Jewish people who believed in Jesus would open up their homes on Shabbat, on a Saturday, and they would start having little services on Saturday in their home of Jewish believers and saying, well, we're worshipping Jesus on a Saturday, not like the non-Jewish world on a Sunday, worshipping in a church. We're worshipping in a Jewish home. We're worshipping Jesus, who is known by his Jewish name, Yeshua, and we're singing Jewish songs, and we're singing Hebrew songs, and we've got Hebrew prayers, and we've translated the New Testament into Hebrew and Hebrew and English. So if you don't know much Hebrew, you've got Hebrew and English, the New Testament in Hebrew and English. So it suddenly makes believing in Jesus for the Jew acceptable and okay. After all, you're meeting in a Jewish home on Saturday, on Shabbat, with other Jews who are also believing in Jesus. Jewish prayers. You have a glass of wine after the service, like you do in shul. They start to convert buildings. They don't have a cross, of course. Not they don't have a cross, because no Jewish person wants to see a cross because of the association of persecution by Christians in the past. So they put a Star of David. They have a bimah. They dress it all up so it looks like your local shul, your local synagogue. Men wear the prayer shawls, the talis. They wear the yarmulke. It feels Yiddisher. So when you go into this building, you think, I'm in shul. It looks the same. It looks the same. And so you immediately feel comfortable. You see Jewish faces. Right? Because we all recognise each other, Jews. You know a Jewish face, you know. Right? Oh, he's Jewish, he's Jewish, she's Jewish. It's all very nice, it's friendly, it's your own people. People, it's they invite you to the home after the morning service on Saturday, and you're having canadles, and you're having chopped liver, and it's all very Hamisher, and you pickle cucumber, and you think, well, this is lovely. I'm believing in Jesus, and I'm still Jewish, and it's lovely, and people like it. Right? And the Christian world is saying, well, if they want to do, they want to celebrate the Sabbath, they can do. They can still eat the Jewish foods, they can, sing Jewish songs. But I want to point out to you that this is still not acceptable, because the belief in Jesus goes hand in hand with idolatry, because Jewish believers in Jesus do worship Jesus. Right. Now, we want to understand, what I think we need to understand here is, in the 70s, the world began to change. The world began to change. I went to a Jewish high school in the 1960s, right? There was no formal lesson about the Messiah. The reason why, there was no need. Everybody was brought up in a Jewish home. We all knew as children we don't believe in Jesus, that Christians worship Jesus, and of course the Jewish people only worship God. We knew that Catholics worship Mary, that they bow down to idols. We knew that Christians all worship Jesus, that they believed he was God and the Son of God. And we all knew this. All Jewish children knew this, right? So there was no need to teach, really, any formal lessons about not believing in Jesus, because it was taken as read. Every Jewish child knew as they were growing up. Most Jewish children in those days went to an equivalent of Sunday school, which was Cheder, and you would know the Jewish people only believe in God. We don't worship idols. We don't worship this man, Jesus. Jesus was not the Messiah. The Christians, the non-Jewish world, think he is, and they pray to him and everything, but the Jewish people know he's not the Messiah, that he was a false Messiah, and that we must have nothing to do with him. And the Christian world believes he is, and they worship him, but we Jews don't. And all Jewish children understood. I understood as a young child, 7 or 8. I knew my Christian friends worship Jesus. I saw the crosses, the crucifixes with him there on the cross. I knew they worshipped him, and I knew as a Jew I mustn't. So we all understood this. Now, what happened in the way the world changed in the 1970s, all around the world, as people started to question authority. people started to question more and more their doctors, their lawyers. They questioned all authority, the police, teachers, and it was increasing and increasing into the 80s and to the 1990s. And it seemed that the world was rebelling against every form of authority. So your doctor was, people no longer seem to have confidence in their doctors. People no longer seem to have confidence in their specialists. They didn't seem to have confidence like they did one in the old days with teachers, or head teachers, or headmasters, or judges, or police officers. In fact, all of authority, and politicians as well. So every sphere of authority in society around the world was being questioned. People were no longer just accepting what people in authority were saying, and this included rabbis as well, right? People were questioning everything. Anyone with authority was questioned, right? This was how the world was transforming from the 1970s. And this is why Jews for Jesus got on board, and they came out with that telling line of a photograph of Orthodox Jews, rabbis, because they're wearing the big hat and assumed to be rabbis, the scholars of Judaism, and they're saying to the Jewish person, think for yourself. In other words, they're saying, don't have confidence in your Jewish leaders anymore. They don't know everything. What you must do is challenge them. Don't believe everything they're telling you. What you must do is listen to us. And we have things to tell you that your rabbis, your Jewish leaders, are hiding from you. And this point of view was in keeping with the times, because the world was changing. Everybody was challenging authority. Parents were not, beginning in the 1980s, 90s, and it continues now. Parents will not accept the authority of teachers to discipline their children when they're at school, right? They don't have confidence in teachers. They don't have confidence in the doctors. They're not having confidence in their specialists. They're going online, and you've got ordinary people who know next to nothing about medicine and law, thinking they know more than their specialists. They think more than they know the judges. They think they know more than the police. In other words, there's a rebellion. And we only have to see this with children. Most children now no longer have a respect like children did in the 1950s and the 1960s towards the police. In the 1960s, if a policeman told a child off for, say, going into somebody's garden, something small like, I remember my brother telling me he'd go into a neighbour's garden, as little boys do, right? He's about 8 or 10. And he's stealing the fruit from a neighbour's garden. And the policeman would see it and tell him off. Don't you do that. You mustn't steal apples from your neighbour's garden. And he, as a little boy, would, sorry, and he would walk away. And he'd be scared to do it. He wouldn't dare do it again. Because he respected authority, he respected the policeman, and you did what the policeman said. And if the policeman told you off, if the policeman came round to your house with you and told your parents that you'd been naughty and you'd been seen doing this, that, the other, you shouldn't be doing, the parents would tell the little boy off. Now parents don't do that. Parents are on the side of the children. They have no respect for the police. The children have no respect for the police. The children answer back at school. They have no respect for the teachers, for the head teachers, for the headmasters. They have no respect for ambulance staff. They attack them when they're going to help people on housing estates. You get criminal gangs attacking ambulance people who are trying to help a sick person. So the world has, in terms of authority, it's terrible. And in the United Kingdom, it is terrible. The world has drastically changed. That all authority is just simply not respected. And so this is why Jews for Jesus have, since the 1970s, have continued using the propaganda in their advertising, on posters, on buses and placards, say in London and wherever. They're showing the pictures of rabbis, learned Jews, Lubavitch and so on, and they're saying to the Jewish community, think for yourself. In other words, don't listen to everything the rabbis say. Don't believe everything they're telling you. They're hiding things from you. They don't know as much as they're making out. And we, the Jews for Jesus, know better than the rabbis. We know things that the rabbis are hiding from you, right? Because Jews for Jesus and the whole fired up Christian movement is about telling the Jewish person that there's a conspiracy going on to hide Jesus. The rabbis and the learned Jews are hiding Jesus from the Jewish people. That deep down the rabbis know that Jesus is Messiah, but they don't want the Jewish people to believe in him. I was told that. Oh yes. You also have to understand that the Christian Bible, the New Testament, states categorically that the Jewish people are spiritually blind and that they can't understand their own scriptures, and this will include the rabbis. Jews for Jesus believe, in common with other evangelical fired up Christians, that the rabbis cannot understand Torah, that they cannot understand the Hebrew Bible, that they are spiritually blind, that God has placed a veil over all those learned men that you see, Orthodox Jews, standing at the Western Wall. You see them there, very Orthodox Jews. They believe, all these men and all the women that are at the wall as well, that they are all spiritually blind, that they can't understand the Hebrew scriptures, and that they are blinded to spiritual truth in the Hebrew Bible. And they believe it is the role of the church to pray to God, right? To pray to God to lift this veil, and for the non-Jew and the Jews for Jesus, to come alongside Jewish people and show them from the Jewish scriptures that Jesus is in fact the Messiah. Because what Christianity has actually done is it takes passages of scripture from the Hebrew Bible, invariably out of context, and pervert it and reinterpret the meaning of the scriptures. They also don't have a full grasp of the Hebrew language, because you have to understand that Orthodox Jews, all rabbis, are fluent in Hebrew. They have all studied, because they are experts in biblical studies of the Hebrew Bible. In the same way a cardiologist is a specialist in the heart, rabbis are specialists in the Hebrew scriptures, right? They know so much more than any Jewish believer in Jesus of the Hebrew scriptures. They are professional, educated, elite professors of the Hebrew Bible, right? And they understand it within the historical context. They understand the Hebrew language. They know the Hebrew language. They've studied the text in the original language. In other words, these people, all these rabbis over the centuries, are clever people, very smart people who have studied the Hebrew scriptures, right? And they know a darn sight more than anybody at Jews for Jesus. And I'm telling you the truth. they know more, far more, than Moshe Rosen. Moshe Rosen was not a rabbi. He was not a rabbi. You have to understand, he never trained to become a rabbi. He was a convert to Christianity and trained to be a Baptist minister. He was trained in Christian theology, which is, he looks at the Jewish scriptures from a non-Jewish point of view. He looks at everything from a non-Jewish point of view, from the Christian point of view, right? Now, Christian theologians are not interested, and Christians are not interested in what the rabbis have to say, because they believe they understand the scriptures better than the rabbis. Evangelical Christians all think that they understand the Hebrew scriptures better than the rabbis. Jews for Jesus, a convert to Christianity, a convert to Jews for Jesus, a convert to Messianic Judaism. They might have been a believer for 2 or 3 years. They're on the streets trying to convert rabbis, Orthodox rabbis, who have been studying the Hebrew scriptures since they were out of diapers, nappies. These are very learned professors in biblical studies of the Hebrew Bible, like cardiologists, like professors. And you've got somebody brought up, sort of maybe Reform, maybe a little bit Orthodox, they know bits and pieces, you know, they know when Hanukkah is, they know when Pesach is, but that's about it. They perhaps went to Cheder. They converted to Christianity with a yarmulke and a tzitzit and gefilte fish, and they worship Jesus, and they think he's God, and they worship Jesus, and they think he's the Son of God, and they're trying to convert this rabbi and tell him he's got it all wrong. He doesn't understand the Hebrew Bible, and this person knows, and it's their job to convert them. It's terribly arrogant, and this is the actual truth. This is the truth of the matter. Now, a lot of Jewish converts to Christianity, Messianic Jews, Jewish believers in Jesus, will tell you, like I did, that they were brought up in an Orthodox home. Now, they were brought up as Orthodox Jews, but there's Orthodox and Orthodox. There's different levels of orthodoxy within Judaism, right? I was, strictly speaking, brought up Orthodox. We went to an Orthodox shul, right? An Orthodox synagogue. We went on all the festivals, right? However, we didn't keep Shabbat. My father worked on a Saturday. So we also, confession, we used to go to shul in my father's van because he worked in textiles. We'd go to shul, say Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, Shavuot, so on, Purim, and what would happen? My father would park the van right down some back street away from the synagogue, because he didn't want anybody from the shul seeing that he was driving, because he wasn't supposed to be driving. I really knew he wasn't supposed to be driving, but you know. And then we would walk from the van, which was down some side street, and then walk to shul, right? However, we walked home from shul, but we used to go in the van to shul and park it so nobody going to the shul could see us going to the shul. So this is to show you that even people who go to an Orthodox shul are not necessarily observing all of the Orthodox practices, right? Equally, it's the same with the Reform. You might get some Reform Jews who might like to walk to synagogue on the Sabbath, right? Others might get the bus. In other words, there's so often overlaps, right? In the Orthodox synagogue where I was brought up, all the service was in Hebrew. There was no English at all. No English at all. Now there might be other shuls, I don't know, they might do half in half, they might do half Hebrew, half in English. That's what some Reform does. They do half in English and half in Hebrew. Other Reformed synagogues might do it all in English. I mean, it's, there's so many variations, right? However, what you do not find, and you never find this, is you will never find a fully Orthodox Jew like the Lubavitch, really from Orthodox Jewish people, I mean, really being brought up Orthodox. Because I've lived in a very Orthodox, what's called ultra-Orthodox Jewish community. I know where all the men dress in black and white and the big hats and the black suits and the white ties, and they go into the synagogue 3 times a day, every day, and it's everything is adhered to, everything is kept properly. They really are keeping they're really doing everything literally by the book and everything. And I lived there for 8 years, and you will not get any of those people believing in Jesus. You would not get any of those people converting into to Jews for Jesus or anything like that. And you know why? It's because they have been brought up and fully understand their Jewish religion. They know their religion. They know what they believe. And so often Jewish believers in Jesus don't really know their Jewish religion. I remember listening to Richard Harvey, who was at one time the head of Jews for Jesus in London, and there's a video, and it's still online, and I did actually write to him and told, I suggested he remove it, because this was a number of years ago, before I renounced my faith in Jesus, and I said, it was awful. I was really shocked at this video that he'd done and kept online, because it was quite apparent to me as a Jewish believer in Jesus, listening to him, and this is supposed to be somebody who was the head of Jews for Jesus, in conversation with an Orthodox Jew, how awful his presentation was of Jesus being the Messiah to this Orthodox Jew. I as good as told him it was terrible, and that how on earth could he think he could persuade this rabbi to believe in Jesus when his presentation was awful. It was a sort of presentation that he would give to churches, right? It was a very emotional testimony, and it was a case of, I didn't like the synagogue, I didn't like Judaism, and I just felt that Jesus was the Messiah, and my father felt he was the Messiah, and he thought he was the Messiah, and it was totally inadequate. If, as the head of Jews for Jesus, which he was then in London, if he is trying to show and convince the rabbi that Jesus is the Messiah, it was terrible. And I could see it, and I was a Jewish believer in Jesus. I thought, this is terrible. This is abysmal. And if he can't, the argument was so poor. And what came across to me about Richard was, and it really shocked me, was his disdain for Judaism. You see, when you meet Richard, I mean, I met him just a few times, he wasn't a friend of mine or anything, but what comes across about Richard is he loves everything Jewish. Yeshua, he loves Yeshua, and it's all Yeshua, and he's keeping Shabbat, and he's lighting the candles by day. Everything is Yeshua, he loves Yeshua, Yeshua the Mashiach, everything is you're Jewish, right? But in that interview, what came across to me, and it really shocked me, was his body language, and what he revealed in his face was contempt for Judaism, and it was showing in his facial expressions. And this is something that he was probably not aware of, but I could see it in his face, was because there were things perhaps he didn't like about Orthodox Judaism, like certain things, like perhaps sometimes people talk in the synagogue during services, right? which people shouldn't do. They shouldn't be chattering, and everybody knows, it's common sense, people shouldn't be having a yachna in shul. But occasionally, sometimes people do. And it was like his criticisms were so shallow and so trivial. And the first question you have to ask is, Richard, why would you give up Judaism for such a trivial reason as one or two Jews talking in synagogue when they shouldn't have been talking in synagogue? And that is not a good enough reason to start believing in Jesus. There was nothing in his conversation with the rabbi that convinced me at all that Jesus could in any way, shape or form be considered to be the Messiah. It was abysmal. And I wrote and told him. And I said, I just think you should remove that video. And I thought it was just appalling. Absolutely appalling. I said, how, and it, I don't mean to be mean to him, because he is, he is deeply in love with Yeshua. He is in love with him. I can't begin to tell you how much in love with him he is. And this is what you see. They are madly in love with this Yeshua. This Jesus. It's extraordinary. And yet, as the head of Jews for Jesus, there was nothing that he said. Even I could see, as a Jewish believer, and I was a Jewish believer then for about 38 years, 39 years, and I thought, this is terrible. This is terrible. I thought, how can you be the head of an organisation like this when it's so appalling? But, you see, as soon as he starts talking about Yeshua, it's like he's talking about a sweetheart. He loves him. It's like, some girls, when there are some, when there's some women when they first get married, only when they first get married, they start talking about the husbands, and it's like, they get all dreamy-eyed, and, oh, it was lovely the honeymoon. Oh, he's so wonderful, he's so kind, and he brought me flowers. But, they're literally, the phrase, worshipping the ground that they walk on. They're sort of so enamoured with him. And you get this with girls, with teenage boys. And, oh, he's so wonderful. Oh, I think he's beautiful. Oh, he's wonderful. Oh, he's perfect. He's perfect. There's nothing wrong with him, Mummy. He's the most perfect boy I've ever met. And you're thinking she's in cuckoo land. Right? This is how Richard Harvey talks about Jesus, Yeshua. He is in love with him. He loves him. He actually loves him. And you find this an awful lot. I could never understand it. They actually love him. But they don't seem to love God the same way, which is very interesting. Everything is about Jesus, Yeshua, which is his Hebrew name. And the more fired up a Christian is for Jesus, the more emphasis there is put on loving Jesus. So within Jews for Jesus, within Jewish believers in Jesus, everything is about Yeshua, Yeshua. To be honest, it's almost, the way I describe it, it's almost like Jesus is literally like the Son of God who has taken over the family business. Right? I'm using this concept because it's a very Jewish concept. You know how you've got dad, like my father was in textiles, and he wanted my brother, the eldest brother, to follow him in the business, right? At first my brother didn't want to go into business. This is very typical. It's the Jewish problem. Why don't you want to take over my business? Is my business not good enough for you? And the son has to explain to his father, it's not that, it's just that I want to be a lawyer. What's the matter? What's wrong with my business? Is it too good? You think you're too good for me? You think it's too good for you, don't you? Oh, you want to go to university now, do you? Oh, you don't think I'm educated? It's the rows that go on in Jewish families when the eldest eldest son doesn't want to take over the family business. It's well known, right? Eventually, my brother did take over the family business because my father was ill and he couldn't do it. So he was looking to my brother to take over the family business. And I would describe Jesus as Yeshua, almost in effect, taking over the family business of Judaism. It's almost like Messianic Judaism actually, and Christianity, it doesn't really need God to save. When, the fired up evangelical Christians, everything is Jesus this, Jesus that, Yeshua this, Yeshua that. And you have this Trinity. You've got God, Jesus the Son of God, and God at the same time. And then beneath that you've got the Holy Spirit, right? What happens within, the more fired up people get for Jesus, the more enthusiastic they get for Jesus, what happens is you've got almost like a takeover. Like Yeshua, Jesus is taking over God. It's like he's taking over the family business. And it's like, the way I describe it is that you've got God of the Old Testament, God of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and then you've got the New Agreement, the New Testament, with Yeshua, Jesus. Now, the New Testament states categorically that there is no need for the Jewish people to observe Torah anymore. So that is, as far as they're concerned, really obsolete. It's a waste of time. You don't need to follow the laws of God given to the Jewish people. All you need to do is believe in Yeshua. So you're getting Jews converted to believe in Jesus. They're worshipping him as God and Son of God. They're often coming to the view that they don't need to follow the Jewish laws given to the Jewish people on how to lead their life. So they're saying, well, we don't need to follow these laws given to the Jewish people, the Torah, so we can lead our lives and do what we want. Jewish people start to think, who believe in Jesus, I'm following the Spirit. Now, when they say they're following the Spirit, what they mean is they're basically doing what they think God wants them to do, right? It's poetic license to do what you feel God is telling you to do, right? So the way evangelical Christians talk and Messianic Jews talk is this. They'll say, I feel the Lord wants me to learn French. When they say that, they could mean one of two things. They could mean either they believe God wants them to learn French, or they could mean that that Jesus wants them to learn French. You don't know who they mean. They could mean either God or Jesus. So you've got two entities here, and you don't even know which one they're talking about, because this is how they talk. The Lord said this to me, the Lord said that to me, the Lord has called me to do this, the Lord has called me to do that. But you don't know, strictly speaking, who they're referring to, because in the New Testament, the Christian belief, God is Lord and Jesus is Lord. So who are they talking about? If you went round a room of born-again Christians, they'd give you different answers. One would say, I mean God, and another one would say Jesus. So there are two different entities, right? Christians talk with their feelings. You'll never hear an evangelical Christian use the word I think. That is too Jewish. They don't like the word. They don't like anything to do with thinking. Christianity despises, and it's quite apparent in the New Testament, they despise all thinking because it's too Jewish. Everything in Christianity is about feelings. I feel this. I feel that. Everything is about what you feel, how you're led. Again, that's feelings. I feel called. I felt the Spirit moving. I felt the Lord saying. I felt him moving. I felt him speaking. I felt him this. I felt him that. If you said to an evangelical Christian, I think I'm going to learn French, they don't like the word I think. I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to do that. They don't like it. They'll cross-examine you and they'll say things like, have you prayed about it? And you say yes. Have you talked to another Christian about it? And you'll say no. and they'll say, well, I think you should talk to another Christian about it. You can't take any decision as an evangelical Christian without having to consult another Christian, because they don't, they believe that you have to get approval from your fellow Christian for anything you want to do in your life. So Christians are busybodying in each other's life to such an extent that they will say, another Christian could say to you, I don't think you should learn French. And you might say, well, I want to learn French. I really like the idea of it. And they will say, I feel the Lord is saying you mustn't learn French. Do you know what will happen? The person won't learn French. And that is the power that the culture has, in that they're following their feelings and thoughts. Everything is I think and feel. And that's how they make decisions in their lives. They make every single decision that they take, they justify with I think and I feel. They can, I remember, they can do something that is forbidden in the Bible, and they will say, I'm sure the Lord will understand, and I'm sure the Lord will not mind. And you could say to them, but it is actually forbidden. And they'll say, but I feel the Lord understands, and I feel the Lord is with me. And you will say, yes, but you're still committing adultery. Yes, but I feel the Lord understands why I'm doing it, and I feel the Lord will forgive me. But you're saying, but you shouldn't be doing it. But the Lord understands, doesn't he? I mean, this is how you get things perverted. I remember a Christian single lady of 40 was having an affair with a married man, and she justified it. And the Christian friends were saying to her, you shouldn't be going to meet him because he's married. And she replied, don't judge me. Jesus said, don't judge me. And she said, I feel the Holy Spirit wants me to meet this married man. This is what they say. I feel the Lord is with me. I feel the Lord wants me to meet this married man. And they say, well, don't, because it's never going to end. If you meet him again, you'll end up back to square one again. Don't, these were older women, old ladies were saying to her, don't meet him. Don't meet him. Don't have anything to do with him. He's married. These were old ladies, because she thought she knew better. She'd say, but I feel the Lord won't mind. And they're saying, but he's a married man, and he'll be committing adultery with you. And she's saying, but I'm sure the Lord will understand, and he'll forgive me. Can you believe this? But this is what they say. This is the sort of things they come out with. And this is what happens when you get people trying to read the Bible without any guidance. Most churches, the Bible studies are led by people who know absolutely nothing about biblical studies. You will very rarely is a Bible study led in any church by anybody who's trained in biblical studies of either the New Testament or the Old Testament. And this is a fact. This is a fact. The weakest point in the church today is Bible teaching. It is the worst. They are so ill-equipped. Although they love the word of God, inverted commas, they don't have the capacity and the motivation, and they don't actually do it like the Jewish people do in terms of the Orthodox Jews, in terms of the study. They don't have a love of the word of God to the extent of Orthodox Jews, where they really are studying it profoundly like the Orthodox Jews do. I went to theological college, and one of the things that disappointed me was I thought it'd be like going to yeshiva. I was looking forward to it. I thought this is going to be so interesting. And in fact, what I found, and it was really shocking, was that all these people were interested in was lip service. learning things to pass exams, learning things to pass exams. They didn't actually have a love of learning, a love of understanding scripture. There was no love of the written word. All they were interested in was passing exams so they could get a church and get out there and convert people to Christianity. That was all they were interested in. And I can't tell you how shocked I was and disappointed. There was no actual love of any of the scriptures. And the books were appalling. I could have done better. I could have written a better commentary. It was appalling. And I thought, this is terrible. Because I'd been in Orthodox Jewish libraries and I knew the quality of rabbinical writings. And when I'm sorry, they won't like me saying it, the Christians. It's terrible. We have a lot to be proud for. We are a smart people. We're clever people. We have a history of learning. And our insights and our ability to comprehend the Hebrew text and the Hebrew scriptures is phenomenal. And you cannot compare it to the Christian world. And I'm speaking the truth here because that's what disappointed me. I could see, I saw it in the libraries. I thought, this is appalling. What is the matter with these people? Have they not? And I thought that all the time I was a Christian. I thought these people are lovely people, but there's something lacking. And what they need is the mind of a Jew. And that, in my view, is the weakness of the church. And I think they know it deep down. I think they know it. And I think they feel intimidated by the rabbis. And I think they know to be honest, the rabbis are smarter than the Christian theologians. That is my view. I've looked at all the books, right? And I can tell you from experience, you cannot compare the Jewish brain and the Jewish learning to the Christian approach and learning. And you look at all their books, they are a lovely, lovely people. They are a lovely, lovely people. If only they could show some humility and look to the rock from which they go on, they were hewn. The roots. Because if they want to go to the roots of their belief, Judaism, they keep going on about the roots of their faith is Judaism and all of that. They've got to go back to Torah and the prophets and the rabbis who have the knowledge and expertise to give them insight and understanding of the very scriptures. But the Christian world is unwilling to do this. The Christian world will not concede to the rabbis because they are Jewish. It's because they are Jewish. The Christian world is intimidated by the Jewish learning. They know the rabbis are smart. They know we have a deep understanding. They know we know our scriptures. They know we know an awful lot. They know it. And I think they're embarrassed that they know so little. And so because they're so embarrassed, what the Christian world has done is put down the Jew, put down the rabbi. They have total and utter contempt for the Talmud, for all the right. They have contempt for anything where there's a Jewish thought, a Jewish idea. The Christian world has contempt. And this is a fact, right? They are unwilling to learn. They don't want to learn from the Jew. They don't want to learn from the Jew. And they take the view, we know better. The Christian world, the evangelical Christians are very, very arrogant. They believe they're on a mission to convert the rabbis, that they're the ones who are supposed to explain scripture to the rabbis. I mean, chutzpah. This is chutzpah. If there's a definition of chutzpah, that's it. But they don't realise it. They don't realise it. They don't realise it. Now you have to ask the question, somebody like me, what position am I in now? I can't be considered spiritually blind from a Christian point of view. So what am I? I suppose from the Christian point of view, I'm a traitor. I'm a traitor to Jesus. But I don't believe it anyway. I don't believe I'm going to hell. I don't believe I'm going to hell. I don't feel that God has deserted me. I don't feel the fact that my not believing in Jesus has actually caused any difference. I still feel very much, whether you believe me or not, because it's just me saying what I feel. I could be, you don't have to believe me, but I feel very much the hand of God is still upon me and looking out for me, looking after me. I cannot understand all of this, how I could have believed all that and now I realised it's wrong, and I'm very embarrassed about the whole thing. I'm very embarrassed because it's so obvious now, and I feel such an idiot for going along with it. But I think a lot of it is also about spiritual deception. We can look at people in other religions and the claims they make, and things can seem very nice, but it doesn't necessarily mean this is the way for the Jew to go. Christians will tell you Jesus gives them peace. Shall I tell you what gives me peace? Do you know, I was painting my shed the other day, and I suddenly realised I feel so happy. I was just painting my shed indoors, and I suddenly realised I feel so happy. I feel so peaceful and happy. And I realised this was because I was doing something that I genuinely loved. I feel so happy when I'm cuddling my guinea pig. I feel so happy when I'm gardening, when I'm planting flowers. I feel so happy when I'm reading a psalm, and so peaceful, right? Other people say, I feel so peaceful when I go for a jog out on my own at 5 a.m. Right? So different things give people different things, right? I remember when I was 14 going along to somebody's house. It was Hare Krishna, right? And I went along with somebody else, and there's somebody else, and we went to this house, and they were all singing Hare Krishna. This was idolatry. There was an idol of and everything. I didn't realise. And I thought, oh, isn't this nice? And they're singing these songs, Hare Krishna. There's all the swaying and everything else, and there's incense. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, isn't this nice? Oh, isn't it nice they're singing these songs and everything? But what they were engaged in was idolatry. It was idolatry, and I shouldn't have been there. But I was 14, 13, 14. And I was being led astray. And I was thinking, oh, isn't the music nice? Aren't the songs nice? Aren't this nice? But this was idolatry. I liked it. I thought it was nice, all these songs. Oh, look at all these puppets there. Oh, isn't it nice? This is terrible. This is idolatry. But I didn't have the seichel to realise there wasn't anybody around to point out to me, don't get involved with this, you're Jewish, this is idolatry. You mustn't be singing these songs, they're praying to this, that, the other. You don't have anything to do with this, you're Jewish. And so it's the same when you go into a messianic fellowship. There probably is a lovely atmosphere. I have no doubt about it. I've been in churches all my life for 42 years. There is a lovely atmosphere. But it doesn't mean that you as a Jew should be there, right? Because the God of Israel does warn us in the Hebrew Bible to be very, very careful. If the non-Jewish world want to worship a man who they think is God, they're free to do so. And it's nothing to do with me. Right? I'm Jewish. But for a Jewish person, it's very dangerous to your soul to go somewhere in an atmosphere that spiritually could harm you. It might look very nice. They might be singing Jesus in Hebrew, Yeshua, but you have to remember they're singing praise to a man who they believe is God. They're actually worshipping him, and this is idolatry. And they're giving this idol a Hebrew name. The tune will be lovely. The tune will be lovely. You'll be thinking, what a lovely tune this is. It's really Yiddish. This is really nice. I want to sing along. This is a real nice Yiddish song. But I'm telling you, you are worshipping in Hebrew to a Jewish idol. An idol with a yarmulke. An idol with tzitzis. This is deception. This is the golden calf. This is the golden calf. It's very clever. It's very clever. How to get the Jew to worship an idol. Put it in tzitzis. Put a yarmulke on. Get it to daven like a Jew. Call it Yeshua, and lots of Jews will fall in with it. So I hope you will think about and reflect about everything I've said to you today.